Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Fight Chat Friday from TKD Coach Academy. This week we're having a look at a user submitted question. So that one of our viewers gave us a question to have a look at, and it was really around spinning, 360s, 540s and all of the flashier kicks that you know and love from ITF Taekwondo, and where and when they can be effective. So we've decided we'll take on that challenge to you this week. So if you're interested, stay with us for this one.
Everybody, welcome back to another episode. So this one, we're going to have a look at spinning shots. So obviously, ITF Taekwondo is known for its kicking and the flair that people have with some shots, but we don't see them land too often. Obviously, it's a more difficult shot to land. So what we're going to tackle today is when is an appropriate time to use them, and when are the opportunities that pop up that you can get different types of spinning shots off, whether it's a spinning back kick, a spinning back reverse kick, whether it is a 360 attacking turning kick. You have lots of options. So we're going to have a look at loads of clips with plenty of options, when it's suitable, maybe when times to be aware of it. Because sometimes a lot of people, they just throw that shot hoping it will land. So sometimes you got to maybe set it up and pick the right moment, and that's the most important thing with landing some spinning shots.
Yeah, and I suppose it's something that, as a coach, I find myself saying to people the whole time is, don't start with a spin. And, it's just because once people get comfortable with them, they feel good about them, they just throw them, and, finding the right time and place and having a purpose for it is a whole other thing. So they have a purpose, they solve problems, they create opportunities, but the right thing in the right place at the right time. And hopefully that's what we can do through these clips, is show some effective use of them, right place, right time, and why it's the right place and the right time.
Yeah, and sparingly is important as well, isn't it? Because if you just throw spin after spin after spin, it becomes a little bit predictable, and people will eventually start to step through the spin and things like that.
They'll draw you out.
You want it to be unpredictable and something that you have in the arsenal to catch people by surprise.
So let's just start with that element of distance management. So why that's so important if you're going to move into these shots at all.
Yeah, so this is twofold. Number one, you can increase the distance if necessary, but also you can actually gain distance. Here you see Alameen in blue. He's under pressure. He's on the back foot, and he just uses it to get a little bit of space. Obviously, as he leaves the ring as well, it's a nice exit shot. As he leaves the ring, why not throw it in there and try to get that extra bonus score on the board? So it's a nice thing to have in the back pocket. What I like about this one is the step. So people will put their front leg to the back, something that I actually try to use myself as well. And that's naturally something that you might be able to do to create space. So that distance management becomes just a little bit more distance between you and the opponent.
And we can have a look at the same kind of thing here. This is David Kerr, creating distance from himself to Colin. Unfortunately, not the follow-on that he'd like, but it's the right idea, certainly. And, this is one of the things we do also have to be careful about it, because you do this a little closer to the edge of the ring and you will almost always travel. Yeah. So you have to have the warning available to you if you're going to select that shot that late in or that close to the edge of the ring.
When we revert back to the question we originally had, what's the whole purpose of this here is to create distance with that back kick, and how that happens is shifting to create space first. So see that shift, boom, and that creates that little bit of distance between you and the opponent. So whether it's you on the back foot looking to create distance, or there's other ways that we'll see coming up where you can make distance to close distance.
Yeah, definitely. And again, this is looking at quite a long distance, but the setup that brings the we've actually missed a little bit on that one. We'll jump into that one a bit later, but we have another one here from Katja where we're not taking a reverse turning kick this time. We're using it to attack and close distance and to almost pin our opponent to the spot.
Yeah, and that's it. Well, once you get the hands, then the distance that you get from the break off, let's say, the spin allows to create that extra little bit of gap, because people really struggle to find the correct distance to get to legs after hands, because the distance, it's very variable, let's say, because sometimes you're close, sometimes you're on the opposite side, you got to use the different leg. So it's a nice option here to create space if there's a bit of a gap that creates from the hands.
And I think there's a common principle that's worth pointing out as we're looking at this one just again. There's what when we talk about the front leg, we have a kind of a utility chamber. So we have a chamber that we can take a side kick, hook kick, turning kick hacks from. And the spin does that by default. So once you start the spin, it's very hard for your opponent to know early on if it's going to be a back kick, a reverse turning kick, a 360, or something else. And so if they don't react to the initial spin and close the distance there, you can kind of get rooted to the spot. And that's what Katja takes advantage of in this case.
And when we look at the when for this and the context, it's when somebody steps back, there's an opportunity there. You don't want to be throwing those shots when somebody has the ability to step in on that kick, because that's the perfect direct counter. They'll step in with the front hand. So you got to be aware of the situation. If they're giving you some momentum by stepping back and allow you to come forward, then there's an opportunity for you there to go and take that shot.
And it's a little bit like the kind of the timings that you'd have if you want to bring your back leg into play with a front push kick or a turning kick. You want to go when your opponent is already committed to their direction, so they've already started moving. Or they're in movement, because if they're set in their feet, they can easily push forward into that back leg shot and close you off. And it's the same with the spins. So if your opponent is balanced, they can come forwards. But if they're slightly off balance, they're in movement already, it's a lot safer to throw that spin.
So that's the idea with this one. We've seen some good ideas with distance management. This is almost a way of just being sure. So he knows there's going to be a lunge forward, and you can use the back kick to just create that space and almost as a safe shot. No, it's a great shot, put right on the button. But it's a nice way, if you can have a nice solid back kick that has good solid technique behind it, it is a good option to just use it as a space creator and just stop your opponent in their tracks.
And I mean, the principle with the back kick is it's a direct line stopping shot in a lot of ways, much like a side kick would be. But it has the advantage potentially of taking your scoring targets out of the range of your opponent, or out, taking the scoring targets away from the opponent as you're throwing the shot. So from that point of view, it can be, in the right hands, quite a safe shot to throw as well.
Yeah, like here we see Red, the Ukrainian competitor, actually throws a spin as an attacking technique. So we don't see that too often, and usually that's the reason why, because you're spinning into the person, which gives them a little bit of an advantage in terms of being able to pick the moment to just step right through, or in this case, to be able to spin off, which is even more advanced.
Yeah, for sure. So this one again, we're talking about, and it's worth pointing out in this one, the landing that Vitali has in Red as he exits the ring. So the foot hits the ground first, and then he has an exit. So that's the last possible moment where this can be a scoring shot rather than just an exit and a warning. Because even if the kick lands, it's very hard to get it scored, because it's, we can see here from one corner judge's perspective, but it might be very difficult for the other corner judges to see this shot scored. So bear that in mind when you throw it. But the exit is there for everyone to see. So there's no question there's going to be a warning applied here. The question is the score going to be applied? And at least one judge will see that and will see the foot land before they exit. Now, because he's in the air, it's just worth pointing out to people as well, if you're a little bit newer to the rules of ITF or something you just haven't come across, if he's still in the air when the kick lands, he gets the score and then the warning. So it's just something to keep in mind as well.
And even if this doesn't score and you're still being pressured to a corner, it is a good shot to still exit with.
Yeah.
And hit somebody on the way out, maybe take the wind out of them for a second, put a bit of doubt in their mind as well, that next time they're going to launch in with the hands, that you're going to be ready. So there's a mental aspect to that as well. You may not get the score on the board, but there's other value to that shot.
Definitely. So the next bit to it is, how do we invite the shot? So we said already, you don't just throw a spin. You don't start with it typically. And so it's like with the same philosophy you have with counters. You have to be proactive and you have to invite the shot that necessitates that counter. And it's going to be the same kind of thing with these spins, where it often works best if you can invite the appropriate opening.
Yeah, exactly. So here we see Louise actually in Red holds her hand at the front quite low, and she gives that shot to come to hands, and then that sets up the back kick to create that space. So it's like the distance is close, and then she uses that shift of the feet and then a switch step to create the correct space for that back kick, and it's a perfect back kick right on the button.
And then we have a slightly different situation where we're creating a lot of one type of pressure, and the opponent is looking to relieve the pressure by picking his timing and stepping through. And because Magomed has his balance, he's able to change from that forward front leg pressure to effectively putting a stopping shot in place with that switch back kick.
Yeah, it's nice to mix that up. We talked about the long and the short front leg options in last week's video, And here we see lots of long shots, and then he switches to a short shot because the distance has been reduced. So it's a nice one to have to be able to link the two of them together.
And again, we're seeing a spin as an exit, which is, often the strategy. Once the person's been pinned back, they want to come forward because they want to, reclaim some ring position, improve their game state. And it's often too tempting if the space emerges that the person wants to come into it, and so leaves the shot open.
Yeah, so that's the flip side of the one we just seen with Vitali earlier. So it's something to be aware of. In the corners, somebody is going to have to make that first decision. So the back kick is at play.
Absolutely. And so we're seeing a little something different again here. This is in some ways an attacking back kick, especially the first one. But if we're just looking at how, again, Pasha is setting this one up, it's, when we looked at the back kick previously, before we talked about these doubles, and it often comes up in doubles because the first shot hits, and before the impact of it registers, very often people come again and walk themselves onto the next one.
Yeah, like a lot of time, if you give away a big score, people usually want to go back and get that instantly. So it kind of like you walk yourself into double trouble, let's say, with the back kick often. So it is something that we have seen. So be aware of that if you're trying to work in the back kick. If you can land one, there is a good opportunity that there will be a second one available. So set the feet, be ready to go again.
But I think what Pasha does very interesting here, he puts himself where he feels very attackable. He's quite close to his opponent.
Yeah.
And then makes big space on that back kick and keeps the knee, the heel very close to the backside, keeps it quite tight, and is well able to find his spot. So, quite an interesting phenomenon, I think, that, where we have that tendency to go one into another. And we saw quite a few examples of that, particularly just whatever way it was, it came out of that Euros in La Nucia in Spain, and we saw a lot of examples of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like that's a good point as well to hone in on when we revert to the original question is when you're trying to do that at the advanced level, you're not just going to be able to throw, let's say, like a naked spinning kick where it's just an empty one by itself.
Sure.
You have to set it up, and there has to be a bit of maybe like luring in, setting traps and things like that. You're not going to be able to just spin and expect at the top level for it to land. So you need to be able to set it up, set traps, set some rhythms and expectations, and then that's when it will come up more readily for you.
So moving into the use of your spins as a counter, because very often this is the way to go. This is the place that people will think of them as a starting point. And it's mostly, I think, down to people's highlight reels that we think of it as a counter first. But there are some attacking shots that really do lend themselves, and we can see a high front leg is a great spot. Particularly, I always say this, in the female game, the carrying with the front leg over distance with multiple shots is a bit more common, and because the leg is in play for a little bit longer, it gives people time to set the feet and attempt the spin under. So nice shot there from Adelina.
Yeah, it's a great shot, and like we always speak about this, here it is again. Like the direct counter to a straight line shot is circular and vice versa. So it's like if you can have this in the back pocket and take away somebody's front leg, it is a threatening shot. If you land a big bandeau here and spin correctly, get the timing right, it is going to put a little bit of fear in the other side's head of how they're going to use that front leg, especially if it's a big weapon of theirs. And
you're watching here with David Kerr against Batista, and Batista dropping the backhand a little bit as he comes in, and David has spotted it and he's going for that shot. But coaches used to say, like, you only have to be lucky once when you're the one throwing the bandeau. Like if you're the one carrying your hand low, you need to be lucky every time. So this is kind of the basic principle behind it as well. It does sometimes allow you to pick a shot that would be otherwise difficult to reach. And one of the things I do like, and I don't know, it might come across in our examples, the same shot can work off the blindside shoulder as well. So if David has his opposite leg in front, the same shot can work. It's a little bit more challenging in terms of your accuracy. You have a much smaller target to aim at, but the same shot can work on both legs.
Yeah, for me, a big thing in this little clip here that we have is look at David. He doesn't look like he's going for that shot before he's going for that shot. So he's not selling it. And that's important part of spinning. You don't want to make it very obvious that you're changing legs and then changing your body position and making it very obvious that you want to spin. So it's just he's on the feet, in, out, super relaxed. He could very easily just come through on the front hand here as well to counter that. So he's not telling his opponent what his intentions are.
For sure. And we see some interesting ones here as well, where Anna is staying right-legged. She's, as such, denying catch of the spin while she stays in this stance. And then there's a change. And once the change comes in, she goes back to the exact same shot and instantly catches, taking the opportunity to go up with that band-aid. So being conscious of your facing, which leg you have in front relative to your opponent, and what shots are on, always important, but particularly so when you want to spin.
Yeah, we see the two examples here of the direct counter under a high side kick. So she comes off the back leg when it's on this side. Belly's facing the same direction. So she tries to come under. We'll see it right here, I think.
Yeah.
So underneath. And then switching stance is the opposite side direct counter, which is a bande. So two good options there.
Yeah, and actually, the fact that she showed that she had an answer for that leg probably forced Anna, or convinced her,
True.
I will try the other side, we'll see what that's got. And it actually opened up a higher value counter. So yeah, it's good play.
Yeah. And
So
here we have Julio Carlos again, looking at the direct one. We look at the step spin. So he comes around, whips the hand through the leg just to be sure that he's not getting clipped with the attacking side kick. So a nice little small adjustment there as well, and just comes right through direct counter. On the spinning as well, you notice it here in this clip in particular, the lower that you can get your upper body, the closer you can be and land this shot. So like Julio is actually quite close here, but he still lands it perfectly because he's able to take his upper body away. If he stays really, really tall, that kick is actually going to go past Augie's head and miss the target.
Absolutely sure. And we have the same preparatory step in terms of the change of legs, and it just shows you how much time there can be with the front leg in the air. To get that, how would you say, that there's time to have a change of leg first and then throw the kick. And it's only because generally it's when the person who's kicking is looking to go in, a long pushing single or often a double, and it gives the time to change the legs, and you can adjust the distance between you and your opponent as well when that leg change happens. And they're not really expecting it. A good example then on the opposite side. So we were saying how the band-aid can work both sides of the body. So we can have it with that change of leg on the open side there, and we can have it with the blind side shoulder as well. So good examples.
What I love from this clip is here in particular, Katya doesn't bite on the first attempt. She picks her moment, and that for me is the biggest lesson in picking your moments with spinning kicks. Most people throw it now, but she didn't. She waited to set her feet, get the rhythm of her feet intact with the attacking momentum, and then she picked the right moment. So most people will throw it instantly, almost without thinking. There's an oncoming opponent, throw a back kick. But no, she picks the correct moment, and that for me is the advanced level for spinning techniques.
For sure. Moving here, we have a little bit from Mira Stjovall from Finland, and what I quite like about this one is there's a bit of an adjustment of distance first, and the head is offered. So you can kind of see that there's a little drop of the chin, the head is offered, and the facing is right. And so, I think that's always on her mind to throw that shot. It's definitely a setup, and and it's nicely executed as well. The hands carried that little bit low, the head with the chin a little bit forward, deeper in the stance. It's like, yeah, go on, try and take a head shot, and then I'll take the spin under.
Yeah, so we can see here that this is a good setup on the feet as well. She's in, she's out, she's in, she's out, testing. So it's not obvious here again, like David Kerr, she wants to spin, but she invites that in, just like you said. And if you're kind of just lifting that front leg and not really having any intention behind it, it can be easily countered with somebody who's clued in. So watch out for that. On the flip side, if you see somebody lifting their leg without any real intent behind it, like this, just flicking, then that's a good opportunity for you to whip around and spin.
So a little bit different in terms of the way that the leg is being pushed into it. So there is a push behind this one, but it does, like we were saying before, let you come around that straight shot. So this is, very much looking like it's a side kick to the hip. But Thomas is able to adjust his distance. There's a little shift to his back, and then he throws the spin.
Yeah, and the important part about this clip for me is the adjustment of the hips. So his target is the hip, but see the way he switches the hip, so the target is now gone, which allows him to circle around. So for anybody looking to build in their band in particular, just be aware of that small point, that take away the hip with the turn of the hips to spin you around for the band.
we've one final one just in this scenario, and you know the timing, the distance in this were really, really nice.
Yeah.
But the offering as well is there when you just look at the head, the hand placement, and everything, but it's also the timing within the match that Norway needed to go.
Yeah.
Or felt he needed to go, and like that made the difference. It was because again, if you're caught by surprise, if the person who's attacking is the person who's got the initiative and the moment, they're picking their moment, it's almost impossible to land a back kick. The punch will just be faster. But if you've invited it, if you've set it up and you've made it so that it's predictable, it's a different story. And then the angle the body makes when you're blitzing is almost the perfect recipient for the back kick. The foot just arrives clean, flat to the body, and it hurts.
Yeah, so for a back kick, for anybody who's just kind of building this into their game, I used to make a big mistake with this one before, trying to counter directly in circling. So the last clip we seen with Thomas circling the hips around, if you do that with a back kick and circle it, that works against countering a side kick, for example, or a turning kick off the front leg, whatever, but not against the blitz or an oncoming opponent with hands. For that one, you need to do it just like Shimon, keep the knees tight and have a direct line between you and the opponent. So try not to circle on countering kicks. Keep it nice and compact, put the kick between you and them, and then vice versa when you're trying to counter the kicks.
So let's take a different kind of approach, and we'll just look at the creating movement. So in just one or two of these, we can kind of get an idea as to how you can force your opponent into movement, almost just because of the indecision. Once the spin is started, you don't know what's coming, a little bit of indecision, and you have to do something about it.
Yeah, we've got Luke Woods on board these clips, so that was a big part of his game. He used a lot of spins, and he always had his feet on balance. Again, putting the opponent on edge, what's coming, what am I going to do here? And a lot of the time, they're just going to back up because they're unaware of what to do. They'll back up, give you some space, and then that allows you to spin into more techniques like we see here with Luke.
And even just a little bit of footwork, and the spin, not so much, but you can see the opportunities there to pick it out. And we have the side kick there, but it's the depth, it's the footwork that allows it. And even just one for, what do you do when you see that amount of reach start spinning for you? You can just see where Andy kind of goes into his shell, turtles up a little bit more, try and stay safe, and the hammer drops.
Probably the better plan, to be fair.
Yeah.
Take that one, exit, and not get hit in the head.
For sure. But you can see, it's a very unpredictable shot that he's thrown there. I mean, no one's really expecting this one. And that's it. Which, again, just brings us for fun into those big finishes and the ones that kind of hit the highlight reels. Let's talk about why they work, though. And, this one, I think everybody would have seen. So, I can't remember, was that in Jamaica? But, Carl Van Roon with a big 360.
Yeah, great shot. But again, there's two reasons where you're going to be looking for a big finish. Number one, you're well up on the scoreboard and it's coming towards the end of the match. You can afford the opportunities to go for these shots. And the second option is if you're just levels above the opponent. And we often see that as well. There's a big gap in skill. So they're the two big reasons where you'll be able to pull off some spinning shots as well. So we'll see a couple of these.
Of course, at the same time, a huge part of it is that it hasn't been thrown that much, or your opponent has gotten into a rhythm. Here we can see Julio, his opponent is following. He feels his role now is to catch Julio, where what's actually happening is he's being pulled and drawn, and Julio's picking his moment to pull the trigger.
Yeah, so he's 4-0 up, as you can see clearly on the board here, and it's the last 15 seconds as you see on the clock. So he's winding down this match, final of the Worlds. Why not finish with a big, lovely shot? So that's another big kind of an idea that we see with people. They want to finish with a big shot, whether it's a 360, tap and go, side kicks, whatever. So a lot of these times, if you see the scoreboards, people are 4-0 up already. So you need to understand that you don't go and start throwing these shots from the beginning, from the bell. You got to pick the right moment.
Yeah, and as this one is thrown, Ollie's already been on the receiving end of those two back kicks that we showed earlier. He's probably physically really feeling it, and not wanting to step into a spin anyway. So it's a nice opportunity to try to throw while his opponent's on the ring edge. His options are limited. Yeah, we can try and throw something a little bit big.
Yeah.
This is, I suppose, this next one is the classic. If you have to exit anyway, why not
Yeah,
exit with a
why
little bit of
not?
style and
Yeah.
potentially get 2 scores if it works well?
Yeah, double tap. Why not? Great shot. The scoreboard is incorrect there. That's actually Vitali,
Yeah,
not
true.
Italy and Slovakia. But just so you can see the lift and 1-2. Great shot. And again, they're going to run into that, especially if they're down and it's the end of the match. So it kind of plays into what you want to do anyway. So if you can finish big with those shots, why not go for it?
And this is one I actually, believe it or not, had not seen until Richie picked out the clip. But, you know, an absolute beauty of an unpredictable shot, because, you know, spinning downward kick, you know, when, you know, okay,
Yeah.
you've got Colin's shot there where he's adding an extra step and a spin to it, but just, you know, moving around, let's have just that spinning downward kick. Okay, sure.
Yeah, and you see the board here is 2-2, but the context of this match is actually the final spar of team sparring in the World Final. So Germany have already lost it at this stage.
Yeah.
The match is over. So it's just literally is just a big finish and an opportunity for Alameen to just showcase what he can do.
Absolutely. But I think what we're getting at across the whole thing is, first of all, why would you want to score with a spin? Yes, it looks cool, but there's often a simpler shot that's available that solves the problem just as easily and a bit more reliably, and without committing yourself to potentially losing balance or something like that as well. So the when and why, yeah, there are moments where the action of the spin will put you in a safer position. So as you were saying, when you're exiting, you're removing scoring targets from your opponent. When you're, you know, when you've already started an engagement but then you're the one who's choosing to exit, it has that same effect. We had that principle of, if someone is coming direct, then spinning or coming around it, the spin might be the appropriate way to come around it, and it might take your hips offline, as we saw with Thomas. So that makes you a little bit safer as you throw that shot as well. So Richie, other ideas, when would it be the right decision to spin rather than go with the simpler direct shot or the simpler kind of non-spinning shot?
Yeah, so like the context of the match for me is vital. If it's a very close match and it's like down to the wire, probably not the best time to be taking risks spinning unnecessarily when there's easier options. At the same time, on the flip side, if you have that in the back pocket and you can do it really well and you've pulled it off before, maybe it's an opportunity to catch somebody by surprise. So that's the other side as well. Like, we got to remember as well in other ITF groups that they actually give more value for spinning techniques. For our group, they don't. So there's not the same incentive to take those risks. Some groups in ITF there is, so it depends. And some groups you actually have to throw it or you get penalized. So there's different context behind why you would, when you would, and just understanding those, hopefully from today's video, people will have a better grasp of the moments, which maybe be a better chance for you to do so.
And if you are going to do it, follow those basic principles of making sure that you're setting the person up for it by inviting the shot that you can counter, or by adding it in as an exit shot, you know, either for yourself exiting from contact or, you know, as a retreating shot as you exit the ring. You know, looking at the right time for it, I think is a big deal, because we definitely don't want to see that spinning shot being thrown, two people standing as equal parties in the middle of the ring and, okay, I'll just throw it. So yeah, that's probably not value.
Yeah, so what we have for the members this week, Adrian?
Yeah, so this week we're going to take a little bit of a look at some of the conditioning work that we've been doing, but in particular we're kind of addressing again this area of explosive repeats. We have a few more examples for people that we can play with. Not the be all and end all of conditioning, but something that we're using quite extensively, and something that, you know, having gone into giving people a little feedback and looking at some videos that people have shown, are still not quite catching the idea of how it should work. And there's a danger that they just fall back and become a kicking drill or a sparring drill that happens very, very, you know, for a very brief amount of time with a lot of rest, and it doesn't really hit the metabolic goals that we're looking for. So we're going to pay a little bit of time and attention to those and try to make sure we've nailed the message on them, and that's what our members are up to.
Yeah, so if you're struggling towards the end of your matches, whether it's the end of a round or whether you're pushing on through the rounds and you're struggling in the semi and the final, then mentally you're making poor decisions and physically you're not feeling that you can't pull the trigger like you want to, then definitely check that out. That's going to be something for you.
All right. So thanks everybody. We will see you next Friday.
See you in the next one.